How much? Yep. Good morning, guys. Aloha and welcome back to our live chats. And this week we have from season 9 of Project Runway, Joshua Christensen, and he's going to be joining us right now. If you guys have any questions, chat below and we can answer it at the end of the chat. Josh will be joining us right now. Hi, Josh.
Hello.
Where are you
How's it?
joining us from?
I just flew in this morning to St. George, Utah, southern
Oh
Utah, to
my
visit my
gosh.
parents.
I can
So,
see the mountains in the back in your
yeah,
reflection.
yeah, it's beautiful here. It's the desert, but it's actually quite pretty.
It looks really nice. How are you? It's been so long since we've seen each
It
other.
has been so long. It's been too long. I've been wanting to come back to Hawaii to see you for a very long time.
Yes.
I feel like COVID kind of ruined that for us, but
Yes.
um, things are really good.
Yeah.
I am staying busy, so I mean, you know, all
Uh,
the good stuff.
well, a little backstory with me and Josh. We've met in Texas. We've done a fashion show there, and from there we weren't on each other's season at all of Project Runway. We just did a fashion show in Texas, and from there we really did click as friends, and we ended up extending our trip and uh, stayed like an extra weekend there and just kind of bonded over our experience through Project Runway. And we want to get to know you a little bit better and start from the beginning, I guess. If you want to start from the beginning, tell
Sure.
us a little bit about yourself and share to the people out there where you started from, and then we can go into your casting process as well too, and all of that fun stuff of Project Runway.
Yeah, how crazy. So the beginning. Well,
Yes.
I mean, how far back? I was born in September of 19. Um, no, I got into fashion because I had gone to school in Utah and
Mhm.
I had been working in banking and finance like the whole time. And I kept doing that after I graduated and I was like, wow, this is terrible. So I was like, what else can I do that would be more fulfilling, um, artistically speaking? And so
Mhm.
I started looking at different programs and different like career moves that would allow me to be more creative. And fashion kind of showed up on the list of things that I was looking at. And I didn't know it was like a real job. I didn't know you could like, go do it and somebody would pay you and that would be cool. So I was like, oh, this seems cool. I can do this. and um, and so I ended up going to school. I moved to LA and I went
Mhm.
to a fashion school there. And it just like started. I mean, I was already 28, I think, when I moved to LA and I got started on this new career path. And it was just really cool to like be at a certain age where you're a little bit more comfortable with yourself and you're a little bit more like prepared to go all the way. And so I was committed. Like I worked so hard at school. I was like one of the top students and did really really well. And when I finished my program, I
Mhm.
had applied to their master program and got in, and there was like a 6 month gap, right? And so between the programs, and a friend of mine said to me, you should just apply for Project Runway between your programs and just see what happens.
Oh
And I
my
was like,
God.
yeah, I don't know. I was like, I just got done with like school. Like I know what I think is cute, but
Mhm.
I don't know like how this would work. Anyway, I was like, sure, I'll apply, but I'm not going to like an open casting. So I just made a portfolio. I made a little DVD and shipped it to casting. And I started getting phone calls and they were like, hey, we'd really love to talk to you. Can you please come in? And I was living in LA, so it was pretty easy. I would
Mhm.
just pop over to Hollywood and I would have a sit down. And I met one of the first interviews I did was with Seth Aaron,
Mhm. Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and who I love. I love Seth Aaron. and he was just so nice and so cool, and he was like, I love your stuff, and I was like, I love you. And and I had been really focusing on in design. I had been doing a lot of men's clothing. That was kind of like my thing, where I was like, you know, it would be really nice to provide more options and to do something different, you know. And so it just was one phone call after another. You know how it goes, where it's like, you're like, I
Yeah.
guess, sure, yes, I guess, I'll see you tomorrow, cool. And because you don't know if it's going to go all the way or not. And so I would call
Do
home
you
every.
feel like the process is a little like up in the air still, or did you feel like you got it and you felt really happy? Like you felt like it was when they're like, "Oh, you're a finalist," and you're like, "Yes, I got it," and then they're like, "No, there's one more step." And it's
Yeah,
like
I think for me,
you're
I was just
there.
I was just sort of like, I'm just happy to be here. Like, I would literally call my dad like every day when I got a phone call, and I was like, I guess they want me to come back again tomorrow. And he was like, okay, well, go do it. And I was like, oh, okay, 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 sounds good. And then finally one day they're like, yeah, we, you know, this is gonna happen, and congratulations. And what's really funny is, at the same time that season 9 was about to happen, they had just started a new show called like Fashion Star. Do you remember that? With
Oh
like,
yeah,
so
yes.
I was actually in the final casting for Fashion Star at the same time as season 9 of Project Runway. And I was in
Oh
a
my God.
hotel for the casting of Fashion Star when they called me from Project Runway, and I like had to like bounce from Fashion Star. I was like, thanks so much, but I just got a phone call and I gotta go. And they were like, okay.
It's like
Because obviously I
picking and
was,
choosing the better
yeah,
opportunity.
I mean,
Like,
it was just so crazy because I was just like, I was like, it really was like one of those things where I just wasn't sure what was happening, but I was really grateful and I was super happy just to be like in the mix. Um, and then yeah, it just kind of it rolled from there, and eventually, you know, we got into on our season. They did that weird little first episode where they had um, like extra people, and they kicked 4 people off immediately before they did like the final
yes.
grouping.
Yeah.
Because I don't, most people would remember, but Gunnar Dethridge was on my season and didn't make the final cut, and then he appeared on the next season.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was just like a really strange little experience, but
They did that on
that
my season too. Like they did the whole we fly everybody out and then you're not casted for
uh
this season. Like it's kind of gut wrenching. Like
yeah, a
yeah,
hundred
yeah.
percent.
It's hard.
Uh
Definitely hard. Oh my gosh. Well, that's crazy that you went from school straight to Project
yeah,
Runway. It's like fandom right after like
yeah.
school.
It was crazy because it's like I mean, let's be honest. I mean, when they do castings for Project Runway, we all know that there's a system, and there's like a little, you know, it's like a puzzle, and they fit everybody together because personality types and design aesthetic and all these things that have to work together.
Hmm.
And I knew, I was like, okay, where am I in this puzzle? Like, who am I supposed to be? And you start learning real quick, like why they cast you, not just because you're talented at design, but because of, you know, other aspects of your personality.
Yeah.
And I didn't go into this thinking I'm gonna win. You know, I was like, there are people on my season who have been designing for so long, and even though, like I said, like I knew what I thought was cool, and I had my own little ideas, like I didn't have the same kind of growth that a lot of people had
Yeah.
in developing their own voice, their own aesthetic, their, you know, I wasn't necessarily the person on my show that, like, when I made something, people were like, oh my gosh, that's such a Josh design. You know what I mean? At that
Yeah.
point, I was just so, like I said, I was very excited to be there, and I made like the best friends in the world. And so, and even like from people from other seasons, like
They,
literally like you and Christopher Straub
hmm.
and Michelle Lesniak and a bunch of other people. It is literally like having a family and a group of people who, these are the only people who will ever even remotely understand what you went through.
Yes.
And so it's always good to have those people close, because you're like, hey, remember that time where we like kind of got like
Had to do this.
got our
Yeah.
minds messed with, and it was like
Yeah, where
yeah,
we had to spend 6 weeks with each other and be pressured to design every other day, and then be showed to America what it was like.
right, right,
Yeah, we
yeah.
definitely understand all of that stuff. Oh, for sure. So take us back to your season and how that was like, I guess, and should let other people know how it was, how you felt like throughout your season.
Okay, so all tea. Like I knew that like when I walked in the room, like I said, like I'm a very fun, outgoing. I love to laugh. I love to have a good time.
Mhm.
But like I was so nervous every time a camera walked into the room that I would be like laughing and we would be playing and like having a good time and a camera walked into the room, I would immediately like walk back to my table and be like, uh-huh, uh-huh, and like start working on something. I was so stupid. But it's like it's like I had this there was a myriad of reasons why that happened to me. But and I will tell you. I'll tell you why. Um, but there were so many big personalities and so many amazing designers on my season. Um, one of the funniest things was uh, Joshua McKinley was on my
Mhm.
season, and he and I are very close. And he actually had gotten an email that was supposed to go to me before like during casting, and so he like looked up my stuff and like knew who I was. And so when he met me, he's like, "Hey, I love your work. I got an email that was supposed to go to you, so I know who you are." And I was like, "Gosh, that is so nice." And then it turns out like we just had like a lot in common in other respects, and so like
Mhm.
we became fast friends. And I think I learned really quickly that in the casting process, like I think, well, because they even put us in the same room together initially.
Mhm.
Um, and I think there was supposed to be, in production's mind, they thought that there was supposed to be a clash of personalities. But we had become friends so quickly because that's my nature
Yeah.
to
Oh
just be
yeah.
like, hey, let's be sisters. that
Let's not fight. Let's be friends.
yeah, seriously. I was like, we can have a great time. That's just how I live my life. Anyway,
Yes.
and so I knew immediately like that was going to be a problem for production. There was two
Mhm.
Joshes and we were friends. And and I feel like also I was also the personality that like I was putting out fires. So when people would get kind of heated or whatever, I was the one that was like, "It's cool. It's like don't worry about it. We're gonna be fine. Like just get back to work." And like and I could tell production was like, "No, he's got to go. Like
Yeah.
like this one's stopping the drama. We gotta go." Um, but I had also so I grew up in such a way that I grew up very spiritual and I grew up in the Mormon church and I love my faith and I but at the time like I wasn't out publicly
Mhm.
and I had multiple experiences in front of a camera solo where I knew they were trying to get my coming out story
Oh wow.
on TV. And I was like, girl, this is not happening. Like, this is not, I'm not doing this here. But it was literally like I would get on camera and this whole thing, that mindset as well, where it was like I knew like my community and my family and my friends and a lot of people who didn't know sort of the more personal parts of my life were
Mhm.
watching this show thinking, oh, Josh, he's, doing this and it's so great and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, there was a lot of pressure. It was like you have this whole community that you're trying to like represent and
Mhm.
and support and make look good. And yeah, I remember sitting in front of a camera for like 2 hours, like in a solo interview thing. And the production, like I remember some of the producers were like, so like what do you think is really like holding you back and stuff? And I was just
Oh
like
wow.
and I was just like, just like ugly crying in the camera. And there got to a point where they were like, hey, would you like to take a break? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, good, because we need to change film. You know what I mean? And I was just like, oh, okay, cool, cool, cool. They were just waiting for those things that I was just not willing to put on camera.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but if somebody had told me, hey, this is how you play the game, this is how you go into a
Further,
show,
yeah,
I might have done things differently. But it was really no one no one really can prepare you to go on a reality TV competition
yeah.
show. Like I
Because
had
it's
a
like they're trying to sell like reality first. It's a TV show, and
right.
then it's their talent and creativity after that. They're trying to sell ratings. They're trying to sell spots and
Oh,
TV spots and all
100%.
that
Like what is
first.
marketable?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
100%, like I knew I was like, okay, my role on this show
Hmm.
is to be sort of this like, because I come from a conservative background, and so I think they wanted me to have sort of like a conflicting conservative, but like secretly closeted kind of conflict.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't really see this like selling magazines, so I don't think I'm like a winner. But
But then again, would you have sold it to them as like a coming out story though? That's something that you would have thought
it,
about too.
it is
Like,
100% something I would have thought about.
yeah.
And to be entirely honest, like it's like I don't know. You just have to be in the right mindset, and you have to be prepared
Of course.
for whatever comes after. And
Yeah.
I think that at the time nobody was sort of giving me hints. Nobody was like trying to tell
Mhm.
me to say some. They would give you like guiding questions, but ultimately it wasn't like somebody was saying, "Hey, do you want to play the game? Do you want to go further into the season? Do you
Yeah.
want to do more episodes?" And so I mean, people love to remember this, but I got kicked off twice because I got voted back on after I
Hmm.
had been kicked off the first time, and it was so heartwarming because uh, a lovely gal on my season, they were doing like a New Balance challenge, and they had to like run around a track, and one of the girls was like, "This is bullshit. I'm not running." So she's like, "I quit." She's like, "This isn't for me," and so they were like, "Okay, well, this team can invite someone who's been kicked off back onto the show." And my my good hermano, my good brother, Victor Luna, was like,
Hmm.
"We'd like Josh to come back." And of course, I'm like crying, and I'm like, "Oh, my friends love me, and I love them," and so I got to come back onto the show for another couple episodes before I got the boot, and I think that's how most people remember me. I just remember getting so many messages when the show aired, where everybody was like, "You're so nice. Thank you for being so kind to people." You know, and people would explain to me like they watch these shows, and usually people are so catty and people are so blah blah blah, and they're like, "Thank you for being so nice," and I'm like, "You're welcome. I mean, it wasn't that hard. It just was, trying to be myself, which I think was,
Yeah. Do you think that comes from like your upbringing and your background, like where you came from, where you were brought up from?
100%. I mean, I always feel like
Yeah.
growing up, it was and especially from my mom, she always made it a point. She's like, it should never be a struggle to just be kind to people, to just like, to really, take a second to help somebody out. And even to this day, like when somebody is like, "Hey, would you mind helping me do this? Or would you like to, participate in this and do whatever?" I'm always like, "Yeah, sure." Like without a second thought, because I would always hope that if I needed help or if I needed something, I could ask one of my friends and they would also say yes. So it's just you put yourself into a mindset where, you want to give as much as you can, because without any hope of recourse necessarily, but like you would like to believe that, things will come back to you if you
Yeah.
do good things.
I totally agree with that. Do you think that after Project Runway, it kind of defined your career? I know you made a career of yourself not with Project Runway because you made so many collections after Project Runway. You made a name for yourself, not connected to it. I think you've done amazing collections after, done so many fashion shows after. Do you feel like it's helped your career, or do you feel like you've built something more than that from it?
Both. I mean, let's be honest, like having Project Runway you know, to back you up when it comes to, you know, uh, any of sort of our industry things. For the most part, it's very beneficial. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like um, when I finished my program, I went back to school after we were done filming. So I was in school while the show was airing, which was so bizarre. I'd be walking around campus and people would be like, "Hey," and I'd be like, "Whatever." And and I mean, just having that name recognition where you can say, "Oh yeah, I'm so and so," and I was. I mean, it's not like I lead that anytime I meet somebody new. I'm Josh. I was on Project Runway,
Yeah.
but having that it is a really good sort of foundation for a lot of other things. And like we get invited to some really cool shows,
We do.
opportunities.
Yeah.
People reach out and they're like, "Hey, would you like to come and speak?" Or would you, you know what I mean? Like they like having that sort of name recognition that comes with it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I definitely had something more to prove beyond the show, only because I did feel like I was pretty green on my season as a designer. And I was like, I love design, I love fashion, I want to do great. And
Mm-hmm.
so I decided to be great after my show, you
Yeah.
know? And that's why I worked so hard. And you know, I I did LA Fashion Week, I did New York Fashion Week, I did um, a bunch of other fashion weeks with you, and you know the
Yeah.
places we would get invited to around the country was wonderful. I did a show in Jamaica with Kato. Like
Mm-hmm.
I got to do some really amazing things that I probably would not have gotten to do
Yeah.
had I not been on the show.
So
Um,
you
but
traveled
ultimately,
so much. I've seen all the shows that you've done, and you traveled around the world and done
yeah,
so many different shows.
and I think that's just like it's something that I feel as as a you know as a part of my life. I really enjoy the challenge. I enjoy the the creativity and creating something different,
Mm-hmm.
and making those connections with people through your art. I think is a huge thing. And so I feel like I've definitely, over the course of 10 years since the show, been able to do that, where I've been able to
Mm-hmm.
go out into the world and consistently, pretty much every year, if not two collections a year. Since that, that's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I feel like I've made a lot of clothes. Dang, that's a lot of stuff. Um,
Yeah.
yes. So anyway,
Yeah.
but
That's a lot.
yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a lot. But the show has helped immensely. Like I've always been very grateful. I've always
Mm-hmm.
been like super, like happy to contribute back. Like if Project Runway has, asked me to be like, oh, would you like to come to this filming or this taping or whatever, I'll always say yes. Or going back to
Yeah.
the finale of another season, great. Um, I
Would
feel
you ever go
like,
back?
oh yeah,
We've had this
100%.
conversation before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah, 100%. I have changed, I think, so much, and especially,
Mm-hmm.
after the show and learning more about myself, and especially that experience and how that affected me, and then being able to come out to the rest of the world and be like, hey, this is how I'm living my life. I'm doing what I need to do to be happy, and it just frees you up to be like a bigger, greater version of yourself. And so for
Mm-hmm.
me, at this point, like, you know, if you saw me on Project Runway now, you would get a much different experience. I would still be very kind. I would still be very funny. I would still be like the good guy, but ultimately you would probably hear a lot more curse words, and you would probably, you know, you
Oh
would probably
yes.
see a lot more of like inappropriate shenanigans, and you know, it would be a little different. I wouldn't, and because obviously getting older too. I just turned 40, and I look great, but whatever. Uh, you just
You
don't
do.
care.
Yeah.
You don't care about
Yeah.
like what other people think. you are living your life for yourself, and you are trying to, you try to uplift people the best you can. You're doing a great job, but ultimately you're here for you. And I think if I were on TV again, that is what it would be. It would be me doing me. It would be my time. And I wouldn't have to worry about all these external sort of issues, or have these other things on my mind that would sort of stop my creativity or whatever. And also, I just think now, having developed my own sense of style and aesthetic and design, it's always so nice now when somebody sees one of my designs somewhere in the world and they say, "Oh my gosh, that's a Josh Christensen." Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes, it's always so. I think that's always been part of the dream too, is having clothing out in the world that people know that you made without having to see a label, without having to see your name on it somewhere, but people know, they're like, "Wow, that Joshua Christensen made." That and people will see a dress from Kini and they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, that is for sure a Zini dress." And I love it. So I just think that's kind of the dream, is part of it, is that where you can develop yourself in such a way where, the Kini Zamora brand and the Joshua Christensen brand is like recognizable without a label even. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And having a voice, I think that's definitely something that we all dream of, or like people never have to look at that. Yeah. And you won't be hiding from the camera anymore. You'll definitely be in front of the camera a lot.
Yeah. And I think it's so funny because it's just like, there were so many missed opportunities where I literally like I just remember Victor and I Victor Luna. Okay, let me just say this. Victor Luna is like one of my favorite designers of all time. And he inspires me to no end. And he and I would be chatting in Spanish, because I speak Spanish, and we would just be like little speaking Spanish, and they would come in the room and they'd be like, "English, please." And I'd be like, oh, and I would see a camera and I would kind of like, "Oh, okay, da 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 da." But we would just be laughing and giggling. And gosh, I love him. But there were so many, so many good designers on my season. Like, and I look at them now and I'm like, dang, good job, everybody.
Yeah.
So it was cool. Like I will always have good memories, and I think because of, it wasn't necessarily the edit, but I think the way that my character was portrayed on the show, I think I came out of it a little bit easier than some of the other people who maybe had, some more sassy experiences on camera. Yeah. But it's definitely a struggle for a lot of us coming off of a show like that, where the internet is a thing where people can say whatever they want all the time.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Because everyone has an opinion, but they never lived through it. So of course they're going to have their opinion through everything. I think something, I guess, through production that people wouldn't know, that you can remember, that you could share?
Okay. So literally, I have like 2 or 3 really good stories. When I got kicked off the second time, one of the producers kind of pulled me off to the side and was like, "We loved having you here. You are so kind to production. We really appreciate you. Thank you so much." They're like, "Do not be upset." He literally straight up told me, he's like, "Your elimination was not about your design. It was literally just a TV show." And so I was like, "Okay, fair." I was like, "I get it." And because that episode, I'm trying to remember what it was for the second one. It was where we had to create a design based on the art of like a young artist, like at a school. And so the girl I was working with had done this really cool black wolf thing, and I had made this outfit, and it was nice. Okay, like I had some really nice little tailoring details and whatever. And even though Michael Kors said it looked like a vampire hooker or whatever he says, it was really quite cute.
He has some like witty stuff to say.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God.
We would imitate him all the time. And the production would also tell us to not do that on camera.
Yes. If you
But
guys don't know, we couldn't like you could not mimic like you couldn't sing stuff too with your mouth, or you couldn't sing because they
right,
would cut that out. So you couldn't sing lyrics or any licensed words or whatever.
right.
So they wouldn't record you. So if you didn't want to get recorded, you could just sing a song and they wouldn't record you. They would cut that
Yeah.
out.
Yes. Yes. Um, gosh, what else?
Oh
Um,
my god. That's right. You had Michael Kors as your
he was
judge.
my season was the last season that
What's
he
your
was a
judge?
judge on. Yeah,
Okay.
so that was kind of like cool where it was like, oh yeah, Michael Kors. Uh,
Of
kudos to
course.
Michael Kors. Make your billions, call it a day. Good for him.
Yeah.
But we, it was just, I just remember like thinking about it now. It's so funny because I don't think about these things a lot. But like just standing on stage under the lights in front of the judges, like I'm having trouble breathing just thinking about it. Because it
Right?
is like
PTSD. Get your
it is
PTSD.
so crazy. People will never understand. Like there were times where they would be like time out, and they would come and like pat my head because I'm bald, and I would be like sweating under the lights, and I was just like so nervous that they would be like time out, and they'd come and like do my makeup and like touch me up, and I'd be like, they'll be like calm down, and I'm like okay, but it is. And looking back, it's so funny because you're like, why was I so stressed out? These are like just human beings who, whatever fame is, whatever, success they've achieved, like they're still just people and their opinions don't pay my bills, so it's whatever.
I
But
mean,
in the
behind the camera,
moment,
there's like I want to say like 60 people like
so many people
filming you.
running around.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, so many people
It
running
seems
around.
like it's just judges and you. No, there's like camera people,
So many
there's
people.
sound people, there's a bunch of people around you, and you have to explain your stuff, and you're like, oh my god, stage
Hmm.
fright. Oh my god.
Yeah, seriously. And every time I say
Yeah.
something, I'd be like, oh, well, that was probably dumb. But then you're like, but I'm like, okay, well, it's done, it's
Oh,
done. It's on camera, so
yeah.
whatever. And then you have to walk around all day being like, oh, I can't believe I said that on camera. Um, but
Yes.
but
That's the word.
I remember production fondly. I think everybody was very kind, and I was very, like I said, I was very happy to be there. So I was like, when you get kicked off, like Keeney wouldn't know this, but when you get kicked off, you like hang out on production for the rest of the season, right? So like I was just backstage, just living my best life, eating, craft services for like 5 weeks or whatever, and putting on my 20 camera pounds and having a good time. But but you were literally back there, and I just like to be around people and have a good time. So production would come in, or PAs would come in or whatever, and I'm just like rubbing people's backs and like being like, oh, this is so cool, like like make the best of it, and I did have a really good time,
Yeah.
just like getting to know people, and I'm still like I still there's still quite a few people from production that I see on Facebook and will say hi to, and if they're in town or whatever, we'll meet up or whatever. So it's quite nice.
Yeah, it is really nice when you gain that relationship with production too, that you can like further after the show too. I think that's like the best part. And I
Yeah.
feel like the one thing that Project Runway didn't offer to their designers was they pretty much just let you go after the show. It's like you have to make sure you have all of your things in line after, which is like you have to make sure you have product. You have to make sure you have all of your PR things after set up, and you have to just get everything set. Once you're off the show, you have to make sure you have things set up when you come home, because if you don't, then you're just left basically high and dry. I
Right.
mean, you're just
Well,
left with notoriety. That's it. So,
yeah.
and it's
And
up to you.
and in the initial phases, so when my season aired in 2011,
Mm-hmm.
um Instagram was
When?
not when
When?
um but Instagram wasn't a thing yet. And
Mm-hmm.
so and now Instagram for me is such a huge marketing tool. It's such a
Oh yeah.
huge part of how I sell product and how I
Mm-hmm.
reach people. And the whole thing with me going right back to school, so like when my show was airing, I mean, I was in classes. I wasn't creating product. I wasn't developing a website. I didn't have a store. And so a lot of that had to, I had to make up for that afterwards, where I was like, okay, now that I'm done with school and now that I'm whatever working on the next thing, now I can start to develop those money making aspects, or
Mm-hmm.
to maintain that sort of connectivity to the world, with your design, so
Yeah.
that people can see what you're doing. But I have to tell you, like, social media in general has been very helpful
Oh,
in sort of maintaining, the visuals, and so that people can see what you're working on, and they can always come back and be like, oh, like, Josh is making another collection. That's great. Da da da. But most of my business comes through Instagram.
yeah.
So it's just
Go
bizarre.
check
Like,
it out.
yeah,
Uh, go to
yeah,
his Instagram and check it out.
you'll love
Quick
it.
plug in there.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and it's just a different world, but I love it so much.
If you
Yeah,
could
you.
give one advice to people going through the process or wanting to go through the process of applying for Project Runway, what would be one thing that you would tell them, I guess?
Um, you will never go wrong being yourself. Like,
True. Yeah.
being honest and genuine will never be a bad thing. Like, there's always people who are going to say, oh, blah blah blah, but ultimately you are always going to feel good about what you've done, and um and people will connect to you 100% more when
Mm-hmm.
they know you're just being you, and you're just, like, you're real, and not just a character on a TV show. Uh,
Yeah.
and and on top of that, I think, to go with that, being real and authentic and honest doesn't mean you have to be small. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you can be a really big version, a true version of yourself for TV. And I think that's a part of what I would try to explain if I went back on a TV show, that there's way you can be a bigger version of yourself, and and still be 100% authentic.
Yeah.
You don't have to be somebody else. You can just be a very larger than life version of yourself.
Yes. Well, we could talk for days. You know us. We can chat,
Yes,
chat, chat for
really
hours.
could.
Josh has visited me in Hawaii multiple times. He's cooked.
Yes,
If you don't know, Josh can cook good cookies.
I am a good little baker.
Yeah, he's a good cook. He's baked cookies for us. He loves it. My family loves Josh.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh, I love Keeney and his family. I,
you're
I
more than welcome to visit anytime. You
thank
know,
you.
you know. And you know you're visiting soon, anyways. So,
I will be coming to Hawaii shortly. That's the plan.
well, thank you so much for joining, everyone here for joining us. We'll talk after this too. But thank you guys for joining us on this live. Don't forget to check back for our next live that's going to be coming up, and stay tuned. Thank you again, Josh, for coming on today and spending time with me.
Thank you,
But yeah,
Keeney.
you guys have a nice day.
Thank you. Love
You're
you.
welcome. Bye. Love you.
Bye.